Hi guys, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to glaze your pots, and I'll be glazing this mug right here. And the first step is deciding what color you want to glaze your mug. Over here, these are the available colors in the studio for dip glazing. And for this particular piece, I'm gonna go with this one here. But how do I know to find which glaze? If I look down below here, I'll read it, and it says Autumn Frost. So that's the name of the glaze I want to find. And in addition, it says one dip. If you look at these, this right here has been dipped once in the glaze, and this has been dipped twice, so you can see the thickness and the desired results that you want when your piece is fired. Okay, so I'm going to look for Autumn Frost. And on these 5-gallon buckets, this is Pebble Beach, Amethyst, Antique Blue, and Autumn Frost. The very one I'm looking for. I'm going to grab this and bring it over to the sink. Set it down right there. Okay, so glaze is in paint. There's certain components in it that separates it from paint, such as it has metals that gives it color, and one of the prime ingredients for glaze is silica, which is basically glass, and that's why we put it in the kiln to fire it at a high temperature so that it melts and fuses to the pot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mix this next. So I'm going to mix this glaze. Unlike paint, the glaze will separate from the water quite quickly, so even after you mix it, if you walk away from it for 5 minutes, it would have already began to separate from the water, and you would have to remix it. So make sure that after you mix it, that you dip your pots right away. And you're going to use your hand to mix it so that you can feel the consistency of the glaze. And you want to put your hands all the way in. And some of these glazes will feel like jello when you put your hands in, but as you begin to mix it, it'll feel more like water. And some cases they settle very hard, and they're actually hard pieces that you have to actually grab with your hand that's inside the bucket and massage it into the water. And eventually you begin to stir until it's all the same even consistency without any clumps. Okay, so I've been rubbing the bottom of the bucket, and it's an even consistency, and it's ready to use. And so one of the first things you have to do before you dip your pot is you need to dry your hands completely. The ceramic is porous at this stage, and it'll absorb the water from your hands, and if it's saturated and full of water, it won't be able to absorb the glaze. So my hands are dry. So before I dip it, I rehearse how I'm going to dip it, how am I going to hold it. Some cases you hold it like this, other cases you'll hold it like this. In this case, I'm going to hold it by the handle and dip the pot and then dip the handle second. But I want it to fill up. If I go straight down and dip like this, there's going to be an air bubble and glaze won't fill the inside. So I'm going to actually dip it in sideways and let it fill up on the inside, and then come back out and hold it upside down, and the glaze is going to run away from the bottom and towards the top. And we want to hold it upside down after we dip it, because glaze has a tendency to run wherever it's thick, and if the glaze is thick, you want it to be at the top because it has room to run, but you don't have room for it to run near the bottom. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. It doesn't take very long to dry. You can actually watch it dry before your eyes. Alright, so a couple things to be careful of as you pull it out of the bucket. While the glaze is wet, you don't want to touch it because it'll stick to your hands and you'll pull the glaze off. Also, you don't want to touch the glaze with your hands being wet. It's not paint. And if you touch this with your hands being wet, the glaze is going to come off and stick to your hands. So make sure before you grab your pot again that your hand is dry and that the pot is dry, and you can touch it when it's dry. So now I'm going to dip the handle, and I'm going to grab it with my dry hand and go ahead and dip it. that you put the lid back on after you're done using it, so the glaze retains its accurate mixture and doesn't dry out. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to wipe the glaze off the bottom, and I'm going to hold it with my left hand, which is dry, and my right hand is damp, and I have a sponge where I squeezed all the water out, and I'll begin to rub the bottom until the glaze comes off. All right, my sponge is starting to get saturated. So I'm going to rinse it at the sink. I'm going to just do that again. I'm going to wipe a little bit up the side with this particular glaze because this glaze is a runner. You want to make sure that you do all your glaze work at the sink and not the tables, so we don't contaminate the tables with the metals and minerals that are in the glaze. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brush out where my name is so that the glaze inside where I carved my name doesn't stick to the catch plate. Normally I use a toothbrush, but I'm going to use a brush that has stiff bristles. And finally, I'm going to give it one final pass over with a clean sponge. And nothing's coming off, so I know that it's ready.